Coming live from the studio, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for watching another episode of All Sports. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On the show today, I am going to talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, and NBA basketball. Before I start the show, I hope you all had a great week. To start off with Major League Baseball, LeBron James is going to become part owner of the Red Sox. Moving on now to NFL football. Right now is a great time of year for the NFL now that we are in March. And officially, the 2021 season now begins with the new league year. The 2020 season has come to an end, and now the NFL is going to prepare for the 2021 season, and it all starts with free agency. And free agency started this week, and believe it or not, free agency is one of the best times of the year for the NFL. Regardless of what team you're a fan of, free agency is always interesting to watch because we get to see what teams get new players, what teams are going to lose certain players, who's going to get traded, and what free agents are going to sign with new teams, and what type of contracts are they going to get. So free agency is always an interesting time period, and anything can happen, regardless if you're under contract or you're looking for a new contract. So free agency is always a great time of year in the NFL. It's something I always look forward to. The Broncos have done many great moves in free agency. One of the highlights of free agency for the Broncos was when the Colts released Peyton Manning and the Broncos signed Peyton Manning in free agency. Who would ever thought that would have happened? One of the best moves to ever happen in the NFL and for the Broncos. Even last year, Tom Brady left the Patriots, hit free agency for the first time in his career. Who would have thought that Tom Brady was not going to play for the Patriots his entire career? But he landed up doing something pretty similar to Peyton Manning, and Tom Brady signed with the Buccaneers. And just like Peyton Manning did with the Broncos, Tom Brady was able to take the Buccaneers to the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl with a new team, and only Tom Brady and Peyton Manning are the only quarterbacks to go to a new team and win a Super Bowl with two different teams. So that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning free agency move to a new team was two of the best free agency moves to ever happen in the NFL. And now that free agency is underway in 2021, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. It's definitely an interesting time period, and the one position you definitely want to keep an eye on is the quarterbacks, because there is a possibility that certain quarterbacks could be traded or hit free agency and be on a different team in 2021. And a lot of quarterbacks that were on a particular team in 2020 will likely be on a different team for 2021. But regardless if it's the quarterback or the other positions, it's just interesting to see what teams these players will sign with and what new faces will be on different teams the following season. So now that free agency has officially begun this week, and it actually got underway on March 17th. Here are all the moves that have happened so far during free agency. Now, a lot of moves have happened, so I'm only going to highlight the most important moves that have happened with the big name players. But besides the list that I have, there are a lot of other moves that have happened, but I'm only going to highlight the most important just because there's so many moves that have happened. But these are the ones you definitely need to know about. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers have agreed to a one-year contract. If Tom Brady starts the 2022 season at age 45, he will be the oldest starting quarterback in NFL history. So originally, Tom Brady signed a 2-year contract with the Buccaneers. They decided to extend it another year. And after the Buccaneers won Super Bowl 55, Tom Brady definitely has his eyes on Super Bowl 56 and possibly Super Bowl 57. And there's no doubt that Tom Brady and the Buccaneers want to win another Super Bowl, and we're going to have to wait and see if that happens. But at least Tom Brady will be playing for the Buccaneers for the next 2 years. And there is a possibility it could be longer. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. The Buccaneers are definitely favored to win the Super Bowl again after just winning the Super Bowl. And we're going to have to wait and see if that happens. But the Buccaneers definitely have a great chance at getting back to the Super Bowl and possibly winning it in 2021. Cam Newton and the Patriots have agreed to a 1-year contract. Ryan Fitzpatrick in Washington have agreed to a 1-year contract. Andy Dalton and the Bears have agreed to a 1-year contract. Jameis Winston and the Saints have agreed to a 1-year contract. Tyrod Taylor and the Texans have agreed to a 1-year contract. Jacoby Brissett and the Dolphins have agreed to a 1-year contract. Mitchell Trubisky and the Bills have agreed to a 1-year contract. Taysom Hill and the Saints have agreed to a 4-year contract extension. Aaron Jones and the Packers have agreed to a 4-year contract. Mark Ingram and the Texans have agreed to a 1-year contract. Carlos Hyde and the Jaguars have agreed to a 2-year contract. Keenan Drake and the Raiders have agreed to a 2-year contract. Mike Boone and the Broncos have agreed to a 2-year contract. Juju Smith-Schuster and the Steelers have agreed to a 1-year contract. Emmanuel Sanders and the Bills have agreed to a 1-year contract. AJ Green and the Cardinals have agreed to a 1-year contract. Marvin Jones and the Jaguars have agreed to a 2-year contract. Will Fuller and the Dolphins have agreed to a 1-year contract. Nelson Aguilar and the Patriots have agreed to a 2-year contract. Curtis Samuel and Washington have agreed to a 3-year contract. Rob Gronkowski and the Buccaneers have agreed to a 1-year contract. Hunter Henry and the Patriots have agreed to a 3-year contract. Juwan Smith and the Patriots have agreed to a 4-year contract. Kyle Rudolph and the Giants have agreed to a 2-year contract. Trent Williams and the 49ers have agreed to a 6-year contract. Leonard Williams and the Giants have agreed to a 3-year contract. Matt Prater and the Cardinals have agreed to a 2-year contract. Justin Simmons and the Broncos have agreed to a 4-year contract. Patrick Peterson and the Vikings have agreed to a 1-year contract. Shaquille Barrett and the Buccaneers have agreed to a 4-year contract. Yannick Noki and the Raiders have agreed to a 2-year contract. Shelby Harris and the Broncos have agreed to a 3-year contract. Ronald Darby and the Broncos have agreed to a 3-year contract. The Broncos picked up Von Miller's team option for the 2021 season. So 1 more season is guaranteed that Von Miller will play for the Broncos. Hopefully he does play in 2021 and he is not sidelined due to injuries. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But at least we'll have Von Miller for 1 more season. And it'll be nice to see Von Miller and Bradley Chubb next to each other on that Broncos defense. And if they play the entire season on defense, the other teams that go against the Broncos better watch out. Especially if we get a good Bradley Chubb and a Von Miller that is capable of being a Pro Bowler like he has shown in previous seasons. The Broncos declined Kareem Jackson's team option and he will be a free agent. The Broncos announced they have mutually agreed to part ways with Philip Lindsay. I was really surprised that the Broncos are moving on from Philip Lindsay, but after they signed another running back and they also signed Melvin Gordon during free agency last year, it just looked like the Broncos were going to go in a different direction, especially after that Melvin Gordon signing. And after they signed a running back during this free agency, that was the key, that the Broncos were going to move on from Philip Lindsay. And there's no doubt that Broncos country is definitely going to miss Philip Lindsay from being a hometown hero, the Colorado kid. No matter where Philip Lindsay plays, hopefully it's not an AFC West divisional team, Broncos country will still root for Philip Lindsay. But they will definitely not forget about Phillip Lindsay, just like Phillip Lindsay announced. Broncos country has a special place in his heart, and he will not forget his time playing for the Broncos in his home city. And it was a dream for him to be able to play for his hometown team, which he was able to accomplish. So the Broncos fans will definitely miss Phillip Lindsay, but they wish him nothing but the best. And with the Broncos moving on from Phillip Lindsay, that was definitely the key, that they are heading another direction. And after the Broncos signed Melvin Gordon and how the 2020 season played out, it just looked like Phillip Lindsay was not going to fit in with what the Broncos wanted to do on offense. And the Broncos were favoring Melvin Gordon more just because he is a little bit better at the running back position. He's a better runner, and he can block and catch the ball and run for yards. That was just something that Phillip Lindsay lacked. And if he was a little better at that, he probably would still be in a Broncos uniform. But because they got Melvin Gordon in that big contract, the Broncos are just wanting to go a different direction because they believe that Melvin Gordon is a better running back than Phillip Lindsay. But there's no doubt that other teams will be interested in Phillip Lindsay, and he is still a great running back, especially being undrafted from Colorado and having back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. There's no doubt that other teams are going to be interested in Phillip Lindsay. The Buccaneers placed the franchise tag on Chris Godwin. The Bears placed the franchise tag on Allen Robinson. So far, that's what's happened during free agency. This is not the end of free agency, and a lot more is going to happen during free agency for the rest of this month, and we're going to have to wait and see what's going to happen. But these are all the important moves that have happened so far, and there's definitely going to be some more moves that happen in the next few days and in the coming weeks. Moving on now to NBA basketball, Carmelo Anthony moved into 11 on the all-time scoring list. Damian Lillard moved into 15th in all-time three-pointers made. Damian Lillard moved into 7 on the all-time 50-point game scoring list. Russell Westbrook became one of the only players in NBA history to have 21,000 points, 7,000 assists, and 6,000 rebounds. James Harden is the first player in Nets history to post 35-plus points and 15-plus assists. James Harden joined Vince Carter as the only players in Nets history with a 40-point triple-double. Nikola Jokic passed Doncic Mutombo for the most double-doubles in Nuggets history. So now that the All-Star break has passed, we are now in the second half of the regular season, and there's only 2 more months remaining of the regular season before the playoffs begin in May. Now is when you want to keep an eye on the conference standings for the Eastern and Western Conference. The top 8 teams in both conferences will make it into the playoffs, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see what 8 teams from the Eastern and Western Conference will make it into the playoffs. There's definitely some teams you want to keep an eye on, and even the teams that are currently not in the top 8. There are still some teams outside of the top 8 that are fighting for a playoff spot. Now in the second half of the season is when teams need to win games. And there's definitely going to be some teams you want to keep an eye on, because as it gets down to the end of the regular season, whatever teams win more games, those are going to be the teams that make it into the playoffs. So we're going to have to wait and see what teams those are for the Eastern and Western Conference. But there has definitely been some surprise teams so far in both conferences, especially in the Western Conference. And there's definitely going to be a few teams that are going to miss out on making it into the playoffs in both the Eastern and Western Conference because it's that competitive. But there's definitely going to be some teams that are going to surprise a lot of people, especially with the seed they will potentially get and because they made it into the playoffs. So starting next week and going forward for the rest of the regular season, I will always give you a weekly update on the current standings in the Eastern and Western Conference for the teams that will potentially make it to the playoffs. And it's definitely going to be interesting now that we are in the second half of the season and approaching the end of the regular season in the next few weeks. And I can't wait to see what teams make it in the Eastern and Western Conference into the playoffs. There will definitely be some surprise teams, and I hope the Nuggets make it into the playoffs once again for this season. But there's definitely some teams you want to keep an eye on in the final weeks of the regular season. Moving on now to end the show, what to watch for this week in sports: spring training, Major League Baseball, the Nuggets, NBA basketball, the Avalanche, NHL hockey, college basketball. Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, and NHL hockey. I hope you all have a great week. Tune in to the next All Sports with Gerardo show next week. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.